हाय एवरीवन। सो मेरे फ़ोन जी रेस्ट कर रहे हैं चाय के दाग वाले स्पॉट पे एंड हम पढ़ने जा रहे हैं फिर से अपनी फेवरेट बुक यस आई लव यू। ओके, उसका चैप्टर 10 मैजिकली वही खुला। यस, चैप्टर 10 Happy birthday, Holly, or should I say happy belated birthday? Richard laughed nervously. Holly's mouth dropped open in shock at the sight of her older brother standing on her doorstep. This was a rare occurrence. In fact, it may have been even a first. She opened and closed her mouth like a goldfish, completely unsure what to say. I brought you a potted mini phalaenopsis orchid, he said, handing her a plant. They have been shipped fresh, budding, and are ready to bloom. He sounded like an advertisement. Holly was even more stunned. She fingered the tiny pink buds. Gosh, Richard, orchids are my favorite. Well, you have a nice big garden here anyway. Nice and he cleared his throat, green, but overgrown, though he trailed off and began that annoying rocking thing he did with his feet. Would you like to come in, or are you just passing through? Um, Please say no. Please say no. Despite the thoughtful gift, Holly was in no mood for Richard's company. Well, yes, I'll come in for a little while. So he wiped his feet for a good 2 minutes at the door before stepping into the house. He reminded Holly of her old maths teacher at school, dressed in a brown knitted cardigan with brown trousers that stopped just at the top of his neat little brown loafers. I used to laugh at these math teacher jokes. Not anymore. Destiny has twisted, and now I am a math teacher, so I can't. But yeah, it's funny. Okay. He hadn't a hair on his head out of place, and his fingernails were clean and perfectly manicured. Holly could imagine him measuring them with a little ruler every night to see that they don't outgrow the required European standard length for fingernails, if such a thing existed. Richard never seemed comfortable in his own skin. He looked as if he was being choked to death by his tightly knotted brown tie, and he always walked as if he had a barge pole shoved up his backside. On the rare occasion that he smiled, the smile never quite managed to reach his eyes. He was the drill sergeant of his own body, screaming at it and punishing himself every time he lapsed into human mode. The sad thing was that he thought he was better off than everyone else for it. Holly led him into the living room and placed the ceramic pot on the top of the TV for the time being. No, Holly, Richard said, wagging a finger at her as though she was a naughty child. You shouldn't put it there. It needs to be in a cool, drought-free location, away from harsh sunlight and heat vents. Oh, of course. Holly picked the pot back up and searched around the room in panic for a suitable place. What had he said? A drought-free warm location? How did he always manage to make her feel like an incompetent little girl? How about that little table in the center? It should be safe there. Holly did as she was told and placed the pot on the table, half expecting him to say good girl. Thankfully, he didn't. Richard took his favorite position at the fireplace and surveyed the room. Your house is very clean, he commented. Thank you. I just cleaned it. He nodded as if he already knew. Can I get you tea or a coffee? She asked, expecting him to say no. Yes, great, he said, clapping his hands together. Tea would be splendid, just milk, no sugar. Holly returned from the kitchen with 2 mugs of tea and placed them down on the coffee table. She hoped the steam rising from the mugs wouldn't murder the poor plant, it being a heat vent and all. You just need to water it regularly and feed it during the spring months. He was still talking about the plant. Holly nodded, knowing full well she would not do either of those things. I didn't know you had green fingers, Richard, she said, trying to lighten the atmosphere. Only when I'm painting with the children, he laughed, cracking a rare joke. Do you do much work in your garden? Holly was anxious to keep the conversation flowing. As the house was so quiet, every silence was amplified. Oh, yes, I love to work in the garden. His eyes lit up. Saturdays are my garden days, he said, smiling into his mug of tea. Holly felt as though a complete stranger was sitting beside her. She realized she knew very little about her brother, and he equally knew very little about her. But that was the way Richard had always liked to keep things. He had distanced himself from the family even when they were younger. He never shared exciting news with them or even told them how his day went. He was just full of facts, facts, and more facts. The first time the family had even heard of Meredith was the day they both came over for dinner to announce their engagement. Unfortunately, the by that stage, it was too late to convince him not to marry the flame-haired, green-eyed dragon. Not that he would have listened anyway. So she announced far too loudly for the airport with anything strange or startling? Like, why are you here? No, no, nothing strange. Everything was ticking over as normal. He took a sip of tea when a while later added, nothing startling either for that matter. I just thought I would pop in and say hello while I was in the area. Ah, right, it's usual for you to be over the side of the city. It's unusual for you to be over the side of the city. Holly laughed. What brings you to the dark and dangerous world of North Side? Oh, you know, just a little business, he mumbled to himself. But my car is parked on the other side of the river, of course. Holly forced a smile, just joking, he added. It's just outside the house. It will be safe, won't it? He asked seriously. I think it should be okay, he said. There doesn't seem to be anyone suspicious hanging around the cul-de-sac in broad daylight. Today. Her humor was lost on me. How's Timothy. An honest makeup for once. An honest mistake for once. Richard's eyes lit up. Oh, they're good, Holly, very good. Worrying though, he looked away and surveyed her room. What do you mean? Holly asked, thinking that perhaps Richard may open up to her. Oh, there isn't one thing in particular, Holly. Children are a worry in general. He pushed the rim of his glasses up his nose and looked her in the eye. But I suppose you're glad you have to worry. Oh God. You will never have to worry about all this childish nonsense. Shit, I forgot he said that. Oh, he said, laughing. There was a silence. Holly felt as if she had been kicked in the stomach. So, have you found a job yet? He continued on. Holly sat frozen on her chair in shock. She couldn't believe he had the audacity to say that to her. She was insulted and hurt, and she wanted him out of her house. She really wasn't in the mood to be polite to him anymore, and certainly couldn't be bothered explaining to his narrow little mind that she hadn't even begun looking for a job yet, as she was still believing the death of her spouse. Nonsense that he wouldn't have to experience for another 50 years or so. No, she spat out. So what are you doing for money? Have you signed on the dole? No, Richard, she said, trying not to lose her temper. I haven't signed on the dole. I get widow's allowance. Ah, that's a great honey thing, isn't it? Honey is not quite the word I would use. Devastatingly depressing is more like it. The atmosphere was tense. Suddenly, he slapped his leg with his hand, signaling the end of conversation. I better motor on and get back to work, he announced, standing up and exaggerating a stretch as though he had been sitting down for hours. Okay then, Cody was relieved. You better leave while your car is still there. Once again, her humor was lost on him as he was peering out the window to check. You're right, it's still there. Thank God, anyway. Nice to see you, and thank you for the tea. You're welcome, and thank you for the orchid, Oli said through gritted teeth. He marched down the garden path and stopped midway to look at the garden. He nodded his head disapprovingly and shouted to her, You really must get someone to sort this mess out, and drove off in his brown family car. Holly fumed as she watched him drive away and banged the door shut. The man made her blood boil so much she felt like kicking him out. He just hadn't a clue about anything. That was the Richard chapter. Oh, I forgot really about it. But yeah, we are done. We are through it. Yeah. see you for the next one. Bye bye.